Hoffman, and today I'm going to talk to you about wetlands. Understanding what lies beneath the surface, and trust me, it's not the bog monster from comic books. So objectives, today we're going to identify the benefits and functions of wetlands, and hopefully at the end you'll be able to recognize the importance of wetlands and be able to appreciate them a little more. So wetlands are extremely dynamic and complex, more so than most people think. There's a lot happening under that a lot of people are unaware of, and I think it's very important because these functions and benefits they provide can be taken for granted, and we don't want that because that can lead to further harm in the future. Wetlands are also some of the most productive and diverse ecosystems in the world, which makes it even more important to protect them. So, a little bit about the hydrology benefits and functions. First and foremost, what I think is most important is its ability to improve water quality. Wetlands, because they have such a low water velocity, they're able to trap and capture sediment, which will allow them to ultimately be taken out of suspension. And a lot of pollutants are attached to these sediments, so that will also take them out. And because of the specialized chemical environment in wetlands, be it aerobic or anaerobic, which is with or without oxygen, it allows for certain chemical processes that will break down or take up these pollutants and allow them to be taken out of the system. Also, decomposers and microorganisms are a big part of this. In anaerobic conditions, they don't have any oxygen, obviously, so they will take out the oxygen in those pollutants that have it, like nitrates and sulfates, and eat it up and take it out. And if any of these processes don't work, they don't take out the pollutants, they will ultimately fall, and the organic matter will trap it and bury it, so it will be permanently taken out of the system. And also, wetlands are big for flood control. They're literally just big sponges, and they do exactly what that entails. They just trap in the vast amount of floodwater, they slow the velocity, they allow it to stay, they allow the water to settle out, slow down, evaporate, they allow for all those chemical processes to occur, which, lessens the vast amount of destructive damage floods can have. Also, kind of hand in hand with flood control is erosion abatement, which because of the slow velocity in the wetlands, it allows the water coming in from tides, large wave actions to slow down, dissipate, and it prevents erosion that could occur from such heavy wave action. Here you can see the effects of coastal erosion, and this is what happens when people will build up right to the shoreline. They will fill or dredge the wetlands that might exist there, which takes out that buffer flood system, and they're not allowed to function and do their job, so it leads to super bad erosion and can cause your houses to fall into the ocean, even death to come. So it's really important to leave those wetlands in place. And just some socio-cultural benefits. Obviously, they're really aesthetically pleasing. I think they're some of the most beautiful places you can go to. They're also considered the last true wild places, and I can assure you, when you're knee-deep in water in a wetland, you don't know anything else exists. All you are aware of is the insects all around you. And then recreation, obviously, they're a really big source of recreation. Bird watching, photography, hunting, waterfowl is really big, and canoeing, and many other things. And again, like I mentioned before, they're very important for buffers and flood corridors. And when that's taken away, not a good thing. It leads to massive destruction of cities, like we see a lot of times with hurricanes. A lot of those coastal cities can get almost wiped out because there's nothing stopping the mass velocity of the waters coming in. And wetlands are a great source for research and education. I think it's really important to educate the younger generations because ultimately it'll be up to them to further protect them and keep making sure that wetlands aren't harmed any more than they already are. And here are some photos. We have a lot of waterfowl, photography, canoeing, and a little boy fishing. So it provides a lot of fun activities. And just briefly on the wildlife benefits and functions, because they're such a dynamic ecosystem, they have many different types of vegetation. It's not all just one. There's varying water levels, there's different types of soil involved. This allows for all different types of species to come in because certain species like different conditions and they can provide it at least at some point. Habitat at all different stages, all different types of habitat, breeding, prey cover, predator cover, migratory patterns is a really big one. Wetlands serve as stopping grounds for a lot of birds on their migratory paths. And if they don't have it, a lot of times it can lead to exhaustion and death because they have nowhere to stop. And of course, they provide a lot of food for wildlife. You can find almost all types of species. And wetlands are, they've lived there, they've been connected, they use it for something. Almost everything can be traced back to wetlands. And here you have a little diagram because you have a lot of waterfowl birds, there's a beaver there working. They also really help to create wetlands. And of course, you always have insects. And just to end on this, I think this is really the most important part. They're not a cure-all. A lot of people think because they can trap all these pollutants and trap all this sediment, slow down floods, you know, they're great, we can just let them do their job, we don't have to do anything. But there can come a point where it's too much. They can get too full, and that can ultimately destroy the wetland because they can't do those processes. They can't perform their functions, and that will lead to a lot of harm for us because we don't get those benefits anymore. And so, for your review, how are wetlands important for flood control? They act as sponges. Yeah. And what happens to a coastal shoreline if a wetland is destroyed?
Coastal erosion.
Yeah. And how can wetlands filter pollutants in any way?
Decomposers.
Yeah. And what are some socio-cultural activities that they can provide? Maybe one?
Would that be like the beavers?
No, like the hunting.
Like bird watching creation.
Yeah. Mhm. And last but not least, my most important point, are wetlands a cure-all? No.
No.
Good. And questions?